Yes. And everybody watching.
A taxi driver whose humanity cost him his life in the most brutal fashion. The news that Alan Henning has been murdered still has the capacity to shock, even though it was so predictable. The fourth time a Western hostage has been beheaded by Islamic State in recent weeks.
The murder of Alan Henning is absolutely abhorrent, it is senseless, it is completely unforgivable. Anyone in any doubt about this organisation can now see how truly repulsive it is and barbaric it is as an organisation. Alan Henning was a man of great peace, kindness and gentleness. He went with many Muslim friends out to do no more than simply help other people.
Islamic State have become adept at propaganda videos, and the latest one shows the now familiar killer masked in black who'd already beheaded another British aid worker, David Haines.
The blood of David Haines was on your hands, Cameron. Alan Henning will also be slaughtered, but his blood is on the hands of the British Parliament.
Today, here at Chequers, I've had the heads of our intelligence agencies, our armed services, the Home Office and others, to make sure we do everything that we can, whether that is taking down these hateful videos from the internet, whether it's stopping preachers of hate, whether it's prosecuting those who glorify terrorism, whether it's working with others to defeat ISIL in the region. Everything we can do, we will do. But it's going to take this struggle, patience, hard work and resolve to defeat this organisation, but I know in this country we have that resolve.
Military action to go further than simply air raids on Iraq, and so when Parliament is back in a week's time there will be demands for a stepping up of those airstrikes onto Syria, not just Iraq. Now the problem was that of course Mr Cameron couldn't get a consensus to go into Syria. He only had the Labour Party on board for Iraq. That is the dilemma he faces. He wants a united House of Commons, but there are plenty now with these two latest atrocities, two British hostages now killed, who think the airstrike should go further. So we may see Mr Cameron come back and seek further authority from Parliament to launch airstrikes against Syria as well as in Iraq.
James Foley were instrumental in shifting public opinion in America to support military intervention, galvanising the Obama administration into authorising airstrikes.
Well, they clearly believe that it serves their purpose intrinsically, and in large part it does, and they've been proven to be right. Their motive really is to maintain this clash of civilizations that got underway in earnest without the Al-Qaeda attacks on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon on 9/11, and then the war on terror that was declared after that, the clumsy use of language by George Bush Jr. referring to a crusade and so on, fell into the trap that laid by Osama bin Laden, which was to overreact and end up prosecuting wars ultimately in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now those two wars have been either over or dialing down substantially. The end of the combat operations for Western powers coming at the end of this year. Fast forward to today, Islamic State have come up with another atrocious way of getting almost as much airtime with much less effort, which is to behead Western journalists and aid workers, to create in the body politic in the West a visceral sense of revulsion that will bring to bear pressure on leaders to do something and do something spectacular. So far, what is being done is rather piecemeal, so it is neither going to, in the view of most military analysts, and we've just had Lord Dannett on saying pretty much this, is not going to achieve the aim other than holding the line perhaps for forces in Iraq, but it's not going to achieve the aim of destroying the Islamic State. And of course, concurrent with that, the Islamic State's also been pursuing its recruiting drive, which is a parallel video operation they've been conducting, again with a British voice, this time calling for recruits to their cause and also to conduct terrorist attacks inside the United Kingdom. This is an edited version of what one of them said last night.
You, along with all the other Western governments, have decided to bomb the Islamic State. So if you were real men, you will send all your forces down on the ground. You will not bomb us from the skies. You will send them all on the ground, fighting us one by one.
And meanwhile, Sam, we've heard David Cameron talking about tracking down the perpetrators of the crime, trying to find the killer of these hostages. Do we know much about those efforts to find him, and what difference would it make?
Well, he's been identified in the view of the FBI. They've said publicly that they think they know who he is. That, in a sense, is a relatively easy bit. Somebody can recognise the voice or the eyes and come forward and say, I think it's so-and-so. The difficult bit, of course, is to track them down, and the leadership of Islamic State, which strategically is a much more important target in many ways. Already, prior to these airstrikes, prior to the coalition campaign, Islamic State had scattered its leadership, had ordered people to stop using mobile phones, use them in the absolute minimum, stay off the radios, stay away from the sort of electronic communications that can lead to them being tracked. So all of that kind of activity is going to make them hard to get hold of. On the other hand, good old-fashioned human intelligence is essential here. Now, there were some eyewitnesses that I've spoken to, sources inside or near Raqqa, who saw some kind of activity on September the 20th before the parliamentary vote. So it may not relate to Mr. Henning, but what they say is that they thought they'd seen something that looked very like an execution, 30 vehicles around an individual in the sand, another one being held in a car. And that was just south of Raqqa. Now, it's that sort of information that will feed directly into all of the other activities to try to pinpoint where these hostages are being held. And then the tradition is, in the Anglo-Saxon world, whilst the governments don't allow or certainly don't support the payment of hostages and won't do so themselves, the quid pro quo is every effort will be made to rescue them. That is officially the deal, although we notice that increasingly families are breaking their silence and trying to make contact directly with the kidnappers.